October 25th, 2022, Select Board and Goffstown Budget Committee joint meeting. Our first thing to do in all of our meetings is the Pledge of Allegiance. Would you please all join us? I pledge
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
For our approval tonight, we're going to have the 2022 second half property tax warrants and the signature of the entire board, so we want to make sure we get all that. Just pass these down. Thank you. Also, as we go through this, we have the 2022 pilot warrant for $4,500, needs a signature of the entire board. I pass that over if you have that one.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes,
can I ask for you to take separate motions on those items,
Sure.
please? So the first would be a motion to approve the 2022 second half property tax warrant in the amount of $24,152,401.04.
I'll make that motion.
I'll second.
motion by Kelly, seconded by Mark. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstained, motion passes.
The second item would be the payment in lieu of tax agreement. This is for the two solar fields by Hebert's Auto Yard in the amount of $4,500.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Collis. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
If I may, Mr. Chair. The next item is the letter from regarding the 2023 property valuation update. This was presented to the board on October 7th, and the only outstanding question that the board had was the cost of including the letter with the tax bills, and it's going to be $720 to put a copy of that letter in every tax bill.
It's important to get that information out there, so make a motion. Yeah.
Make a motion, we allow the $720 it was to be used for the letter that we put into the tax bills.
Second.
Motion by Mark, seconded by Jim. Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Signed.
And then the last item, I distributed today to the members a draft letter to the City of Manchester and the Manchester Fire Department. Just be looking if there are any changes that need to be made. Otherwise, I'd ask for a motion and a vote to send that.
Yep, can we have a little bit more time to look this over, Peter? Just
Pardon me?
Can we have a little more time to look at this? Do we need to act on it tonight? I don't think we do we?
Yeah, I think we want to get it out there because we're short now.
No, we just got it this afternoon.
You know, it's out today. I think the only thing I would recommend is in the bold paragraph where it says, based on availability of staffing of shift, it cannot be guaranteed. I said we cannot reply or we cannot cover.
Okay.
That's my suggestion. That's the board.
Yeah,
I agree.
I agree.
I think we leave the door open for, oh, they'll cover us anyway type of thing, and we don't put our foot down.
Where were you again, Peter? I'm sorry.
What's this one called?
Do you have an issue with that?
In the bolded paragraph? Yep.
Just at the end.
Chief, you don't have a problem with that, right?
Cannot be guaranteed.
Yep.
We need to read this into the record of any kind?
You do not need to read it into the record. Once we type up the replacement, if the motion can include the authorization for the chair to sign, at that point it becomes a public record and anyone could come and request that.
So I need a motion.
I'll make a motion that we send the letter to the Honorable Mayor Joyce Craig and honorable members of the Board of Aldermen in regards to our fire and EMS coverage to the town of City of Manchester, with permission with changes and with permission from the board to have the chairman sign.
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Mark. Any just further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed, abstaining, motion passes.
Thank you.
This time, I'm going to turn it over to Melanie. Do you have a member you guys want to appoint?
We do. At this time, I'll ask to take a roll
Roll call.
call of the Budget Committee members. You can start on that side.
Samantha Curran's present.
Fred Blood, I think I'm here. Joe Alexander, present. Cobb's present.
Laura Stevens present.
Evelyn Redmond, present.
Richard Fletcher, present. Bill Corders, present.
Stacy Belmore, Vice Chair, present.
Melanie Renfrew Hebert, Chair, present. Thank you. So at this time, we have had an application to fill the vacancy for a member at large for the Budget Committee, Ms. Gail Lebrecht. And I'll ask Ms. Lebrecht to come up and tell us a little bit about herself and why she is interested in being on the Budget Committee.
Hi, everybody. You may not know who I am, but I think I've seen all these faces for many, many years. I am officially your recording secretary, so I'm familiar with what the Budget Committee has done. But I'll go back a little bit. I've lived in Goffstown for a long time, since 2001. I know the question that was asked before was, what do you like about Goffstown? And it's the best, what was the word? I always keep forgetting the words, but it's the best home I've ever had, the best location. And what I like best about it is community, community, and community. The people just make Goffstown. You see kindness everywhere you go, and so I just love Goffstown. I am on the CIP committee, I am on the planning board, I am on the zoning board, and the EDC. And most of those, except for the zoning board, got started because I was recording secretary first. So they had an alternate position or whatever. So, but I've been on the zoning board since like 2005-ish. So I do love Goffstown. I love serving the town of Goffstown. When I saw that the need was there and it's really too late for anybody to fill in and catch up on what you guys have been doing and what's been presented, you know, I guess I was willing to do that if you'll have me.
Thank you, Gail. Did everyone receive a copy of Gail's application in the email today? I have an extra copy. Mr. Platt, if you'd like one.
I know her well.
Perfect. So at this time, I would ask if there are any budget-related questions for Gail? Yes, Stacy.
Thank you for your commitment to so many different, seems like you took the opportunity when there's an opening just to jump into it.
Let me clarify. My daytime job, I do childcare in my home, so I'm with infants, toddlers, and preschoolers all day long. It's wonderful to get out with adults.
Well, no. That's what we call it. So I guess what interests you about this committee, if there is an interest and you're not just doing this because there's an opening?
Well, there's a little bit of both.
Okay.
I just, I hate to see an empty spot. And like I said, I know it's going to be hard to fill with somebody who's kind of current on what's been presented so far. And it's just my commitment to Goffstown. It's just.
Thank you. Yes, Fred.
As one who's got overcommitted and happens sometimes drowning with the responsibilities, how can you handle this with everything else?
It's really not going to be much different because I do the minutes to this anyway. So it's not going to be any different. If it was, I probably wouldn't have.
Thank you. Are there any other questions for Gail? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion to approve.
Second.
So, I can't see that. Thank you, Evelyn. Motion made by Evelyn, seconded by Fred. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Raise your hand, please.
Thank you.
As I'm learning the etiquette. Good, thank you.
Thank you.
Any opposed? Anyone abstaining? No, hearing none, the motion passed. Welcome, Gail.
Thank you.
Welcome, Gail. I think you'll be moving one seat over about.
Okay.
I'm not
So I
certain.
have to be
Right.
sworn in?
Yes. So we'll take a brief break,
Recess.
recess, thank you.
This evening is the Goffstown Public Library.
Seven.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Diane Hathaway, your library director.
And I'm Kathy Coughlin, Vice Chair of the Library Board of Trustees. I'm going to start tonight just by giving a little bit of some background information. Members of the committee who have been on it before know some of this information, but I just want to recap it, especially for folks who are watching online. The Goffstown Public Library is 113 years old. We consider its birthday October, so this is our birthday month. When it was built, it served a community of around 2,500 residents, And now we know that Goffstown has grown to around 18,000 residents. The library had an elevator and emergency staircase built in 1998, and that allowed access to all 3 levels with handicap access. In 2019, we were recognized by the New Hampshire Library Trustee Association as Library of the Year. And this year, our Diane Hathaway has been recognized as Library Director of the Year, and we are hosting a ceremony at the library on November 9th at 6 p.m., and we would love for the community to attend. We are very proud of our leadership and these awards, and we can do even more if we have more programming space. I'd like to give a little update about our expansion project. We have been working for several years towards expanding the physical library. Some timeline numbers: in 2019, the grass lot, which is the grassy area on the north side of the building, was purchased, and the little parking lot, the upper parking lot, that was cost $272,000. In 2018, we did a community-wide survey about the library expansion. In 2019, we had a warrant article to use some of our library funds, our privately held funds, so that wasn't taxpayer funds. That was $80,000. In 2021, we had another warrant article asking to use $95,000, again, of our trustee privately held funds, so non-taxpayer funds. And that was for more pre-construction work, fundraising, feasibility study, some geotechnical work. And the total of these costs to date is an investment of around $447,000. To help with some of the fundraising for the project, the foundation was formed. This is a nonprofit. It's a 501c3. And we are actually, the foundation is working with the same fundraising consultant that did the feasibility study to help with the foundation of the capital campaign. Our expansion project is an investment into our community. We will be asking for a bond warrant article to be on the 2023 ballot. We're still conducting listening sessions, and if you wish to see the plans or ask questions, the next listening session is November 3rd at 7 p.m. at the library, so you can actually see the space. And I also wanted to put a little reminder out there that the Library Board of Trustees and the Goffstown Public Library Foundation will be hosting Once Upon a Pie. That is November 19th at 6:30. That's going to be at Stark Hall. There's definitely some competition between department heads, and also be looking for any other town committees who want to enter a pie on a committee level as well.
Don't worry, they give out participation trophies.
Yes, and we have to remember that the pie award has to be brought back for the event. And I'll go ahead and turn it over to Diane to actually go over the nitty-gritty of our operating budget.
We're in tab 7 of your notebooks, and I'm going to be referring to the purple handout that we provided. So the 2023 budget request by the Library Board of Trustees is $821,386. It's an increase of 5.34% from 2022, or $41,647. I'm just going to go through the lines that have changed unless you want something else. And the wages were based on step increases for every staff member plus a 3% market adjustment to our matrix. This was the second year in a row that we're asking for an adjustment to that matrix. So you'll see the increases for each wage line in your packet. Longevity pay has been decreased by $2,200, and this is money that is based on people in the position. So with some changeover, that line has been reduced for 2023. The next line that sees change is tuition reimbursement. We have one staff member finishing her graduate degree in 2023, and this is the remaining money that she needs to finish that degree. We pay 50% of tuition for our staff according to our personnel manual. So the increase for that line is $3,183. The next page, we've increased our employee development line by $400. We will probably overexpend that line here in 2022. We increased our minute taker line. The Library Board of Trustees meets twice a month now, so we've increased our number of meetings to 24 to allow for public hearings and things like that. So that was increased by $675. Operating supplies, we reduced by $500, and this is money that we use to purchase materials to process books, repackage CDs, music, things like that. And more books are not coming in hardcover, they're coming in paperback now, so there's a lot less processing we have to do. So we've reduced that line as a result. We also reduced our postage line by $100. We're doing more and more communication with the public via email, so we don't mail as many overdue notices, plus we're not charging fines anymore, so there's fewer that we mail out. There's no change in lines through heating oil, and the heating oil line has been increased by $2,324 as a result of the contracted cost that the town has for heating oil. We use about 1,500 gallons a year for the 3-story library building. If I can go back to the computer line, just to clarify some things, that we're under the town for a lot of IT service, for most of our IT service. We still carry most of the costs in our budget. So you'll see for line 48450, computers and communications, that we do budget for our own hardware and some software needs. For electricity, 50270, we increased that by $1,772. That's just on the delivery side of the bill. So that is increased. Water, we've increased by $100 based on information we received from the Goffstown Village Water Precinct. Telecommunications, all our telecommunications costs are in our budget as well, and that was increased by just $65. On the last page, for programming is an essential core service for us, and we've increased that line by $1,300. We're seeing a lot of increases in libraries as far as bringing people in to perform for us or to provide programming. So we've increased that accordingly. GMILKS is that line is our dues for our consortium. And that is based on a formula and also includes delivery of materials between the libraries. So that was increased by $3,703. We're seeing huge increases from our integrated library system provider as far as maintenance. So we've had to adjust that. And then electronic subscriptions and contracts, that is also essential for us. A lot of our digital resources comes out of that line, and we're anticipating vendor increases of 10%, unfortunately. So that's $2,155 for that line. Questions?
Any questions from the board?
Good.
I have a question, Diane, on 48450, which is the computer communications.
Yes,
That's the same amount that you got last year.
yes.
Are you buying the same thing or different things? You bought this one includes 5 desktops and a laptop. Are you buying
Exactly.
5 more desktops and a laptop?
Yeah, we rotate our purchasing, so every 4 to 5 years, we're replacing some of our computers and our laptops. So it's not the same hardware that we replaced in 2022, it's different.
Okay, what happens to the old hardware?
IT takes them, I don't know what they do with them, but.
You give it to IT?
Yes, everything goes back to IT, and then they wipe them clean and do whatever they do.
All right, thank you.
Yes, you're welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Thank you for being here. On the tuition reimbursement, the person who takes that, is there, you may have answered this last year, I just can't remember. Is there a contract after she or he has done those classes that they must stay here for a certain amount of time?
Yes, she'll need to remain with us for 3 years.
Okay, after she's done the classes?
Yes,
or-
that's
okay.
per our personnel manual.
Okay, thank you so much.
Yes.
Joe?
Thank you. I'm wondering specifically around the warrant article we had submitted last year that was approved around the use of the library trust funds. I'm wondering kind of if you can give us details on how that was used, what was used for. I don't understand fundraising and site development, things like
Yep.
that. And then also just like how much is left in the library trust fund.
I'm glad you asked that, Joe, because I have a handy spreadsheet for that. So, thank you. So far, it was a $95,000 warrant article, and it was actually requested in 2021. So, to date, we have spent $63,164.15, which makes our balance $34,060.20. And at this point, the money that's been used has paid a construction manager for their initial work for us. It's paid our survey. It's paid geotechnical investigations of the property. It's paid for some engineering work that needed to be done, and paid the fundraiser for the feasibility study. So that's pretty much everything that's been paid to date.
But we're working on a marketing RFP.
Okay, and do we plan on using some of that, or do we plan on taking the same fundraiser that worked on the feasibility to work on the capital campaign as well?
Yes.
The
And what
foundation is
percentage-
doing that.
I'm sorry?
It's through the foundation.
Okay, and
So-
what percentage do you see, like, because it's large bond you're asking for, so what percentage is your goal to fundraise? And what percentage would you ask taxpayers to cut?
So the fundraiser feasibility study showed us that we could raise about $750,000 with a capital campaign. The goal is to request the bond for the construction work, and then have fundraising repay that. So pay the annual costs.
Okay, so the 750,000 would then go back into the general fund
Yeah,
after
it would pay the bond, the annual bond payment.
for a certain number of years? the bond is
Yes,
in.
yeah.
And then, okay, I might have another one, I'm not ready yet.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? Diane, on 41,100, which is your regular wages, we have an increase of 19,605. Is that just the steps
That's steps and the 3%.
and the 3%?
Yes, it's both.
So
And-
last year was about the same amount?
I don't know exactly, no, because those who receive step increases start at a higher rate of pay. So it shouldn't be the same amount.
But there was a 3% adjustment last year.
There was.
Plus steps.
Yes.
And there's another 3% again this year plus steps.
Correct.
Okay. Anybody else?
It was 8,000.
Yeah, I don't have that in front of me.
Go ahead.
Hi, thanks
Hi.
for coming, ladies. The question I had was on 69,100.
Yep.
Includes 3 times per week courier delivery. What exactly is that?
Within our consortium of 12 libraries, we share materials, and in order to get those materials to move around those libraries, we have to pay a delivery service to do that.
So is this books? Is this what exactly? are they-
It's any material that can be requested through our catalog. So if you wanted an audiobook that's coming from Salem, let's say, it's going to come on our delivery service.
Okay. And it's 3 times per week. And that's about 350-ish a month. Okay. Okay.
You all set, Frank?
All set.
Good. Anybody else? Seeing none? Thank you, Diane.
All right, thanks very much. You all know where to find me if you
Yeah, if anyone has any other questions, we know that the budget's a long process, just reach out and we'll do our best to answer as fully as possible. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next up is Fire Section 4, I believe.
Good evening, Mr. Chairman and members. Tonight I have before you the fire department budget, which is under tab 4. I just wanted So we're pleased to present to you tonight the 2023 Fire Department budget. Our mission really is committed to providing quality emergency and non-emergency services to the citizens and businesses of Goffstown. And we provide the services through emergency response, education, communications, and interaction with the community in any number of ways on a daily basis. Our service delivery programs include fire suppression, emergency medical services, hazardous materials and special operations response, fire and life safety prevention and community education, emergency management and planning, the community emergency response team, which is the CERT group, and we also provide community outreach. I want to give you a quick overview of our performance summary for last year. Last year, we had 2,706 calls for service. That could be fire, EMS, general service call, and those types of items. I suspect the spike from 2020 had to do, obviously, with COVID or some runoff from that as we slowly came out of it.
Chief, does this include mutual aid calls, or are these just within Goffstown?
Yes, it includes all mutual aid calls also. And this year, to date, from October 10th, we've done 2,122 calls for service.
Evelyn?
Yes, Chief, can you give us an idea of how many mutual aid calls you responded to this so far this year?
I can, well, I may not have it right with me, I'll definitely get it to you.
That's fine,
But,
thank you.
I'm thinking anywhere's up to, we can do up to like 100, 200.
A year?
Yes. And if you look on page 3, we do break it down by the types of calls. Just in this case, we didn't do the mutual aid, but the big blue area is all the EMS calls we do, which is the biggest percentage of our runs at 65%. And in 2021, we did 1,762 calls. And then our next biggest piece is service calls. And again, that can be any number of things. It can be public education. It can be taking fire alarm systems offline so they can be worked on. It could be help the public if they're locked out of their house. That's all clumped into one. And then, actually, our fire calls are really just 2% of the budget now. And that trend has really started switching over the last 10 years or so, and we're really becoming EMS providers in our service lines. And then our false alarms are 7% of our calls. So in 2021, actually 2022, we completed the purchase of a 22 Pierce Enforcer engine at a cost of $703,313. The board gave approval for the purchase of it back in May. So this was part of the CIP process, and it was actually $61,700 below our allocated CIP appropriation of $775,000. So that stays in that fund for future apparatus. And delivery of that is expected within 12 to 15 months, but that's a very loose estimate. As you know, if you're following the auto manufacturing industry, it's very unpredictable.
Chief Fred has a question.
Couple of questions. First, educate me, what's a Pierce Enforcer engine?
It's the fire engine. It's just like on a model of a car.
Oh.
They just, it's like, I was gonna say Cadillac, but that wouldn't go over. This certainly is not a Cadillac, but, it has different features than other ones. So it's a model.
Okay, the Enforcer threw me, I never heard of the Enforcer.
Yeah, it's
Pierce, I
just,
assume, is the brand name.
and it's a name, the Enforcer's the model type.
Looks like that.
Oh, okay, good. The mutual aid, I raised my hand earlier, is that going up or down?
I think it's going up.
And how do we bill for it, and how do we get billed when we see mutual aid from other
So
towns?
on the EMS side of the house, the agreement with local fire departments or EMS, if we respond mutual aid with an ambulance, we charge their patient, regardless of what town it is. Fire mutual aid has always been, we don't charge each other. We basically just provide support to each other.
Because with 2% fire, I would think more and more would be mutual aid. You'd be relying on other towns and vice versa, so we each cut our equipment down, because it's just not as much demand as there used to be.
The amount of equipment that we have is somewhat based on the Insurance Services Organization, which is a rating, an insurance rating that the town has, and it's partly depending on how much apparatus we have, how many full-time people, what type of dispatch center, so we wouldn't reduce it.
Well, it was logical if you have fewer and fewer fire calls, you'd have less and less equipment, because you'd be relying on each other more. You'd spread the burden over several towns.
No, mutual aid's not designed to do that. Mutual aid is designed that when we use all our resources and we have additional calls, then it's when you need assistance, and it's not necessarily to supplement, Bedford Fire or anyone else with our equipment.
Mutual aid calls to Manchester were a big deal a few years ago during the drug issues. We were running out into Manchester, being called into Manchester to go administer Narcan for people who overdosed, and that was a really big thing, and it's still, I think, a big thing that we're running as the drug issues. Just lately, it's been because of COVID, I think, but the last couple of years, it was the Narcan. They had to go. We were going there all the time.
I believe that, but that's not fire related.
Well, it's fire-related budget. If you're talking about the fire department budget, that's a big part of it, right? Go ahead, Sean, sorry.
We also took delivery of a 2022 Ford F-150 PL Custom ambulance. That again was part of the CIP process. That went into service 2 weeks ago, and the cost of that ambulance was $250,635. Also in last year's budget capital, we completed the resurfacing and repair of the floor and drains at the Mass Road Fire Station, Station 19. And that project was budgeted at $50,000 and came in on budget.
Chief, just a typographical error for the Budget Committee. we didn't purchase a 150, it was a 450 we purchased, correct?
Yes, that is a typo.
Just to make.
An F-150 wouldn't pull it.
Kelly has a question.
Chief, in this pie chart that you have for us, where would car accidents fall within this?
We would what?
Where would car accidents fall within this pie chart?
Under EMS, if there's injuries.
And what percentage would you say that we're having fire apparatus respond to car accidents within?
Our fire apparatus respond on any breathing difficulty, unconscious, pregnancy, gunshots, anything that is manpower intensive that would require additional people to help get people out of vehicles, apartments, houses, second floors. So only the emergent or critical type medical emergencies.
Thank you.
We're also successfully able to obtain a locality equipment purchase program from the state, which allowed us to purchase 2 LP15 monitor defibrillators in the amount of $77,000. And after the trade-in, you can actually trade in defibrillators. The cost to the town is going to be $8,900, so we're pretty pleased to get that. And that's offset by that $50,000. Probably our biggest accomplishment last year, we completed the onboarding and completion of primary probationary requirements for 12 firefighters, AEMTs. 8 of the firefighter AEMTs were hired through the Staffing for Adequate Fire and Emergency Response Grant, that's known as a SAFER grant. This year, we continue to fund 4 of the SAFER grant positions through that program. The other 4 positions sunsetted, so we've only got the 4 left. 100% of those 4 firefighters is funded from that SAFER grant. And the amount of funding for the 4 firefighters is $302,909. We also applied for another grant in our fire prevention division, and that is to replace in the apparatus and command vehicles, we have key locks, which allows us to get into businesses in the community, but it's a secure way of giving the community confidence that only certain people can get at their keys.
Chief, I have a question.
Well, I'm sorry. Go
No,
ahead.
that's all right. How much, do you have an anticipated amount that grant might be, and would that cover the full replacement, or would there be additional costs?
Yeah, I think that grant may have been maybe like 20, 30,000, but it was enough to cover all the units that we have in our vehicles.
Thank you, Chief.
Then, as many of you may know, we're currently actively working on the police and fire department radio infrastructure project. The installation of the radio equipment in vehicles, building of 2 towers, one at the police station and one at Station 17 on Terrell Hill is in progress. And we're told by the manufacturers that the contractor that all the equipment is in. They now have to start putting it together. They've, if you notice at the police station, you now have a tall tower, and up at Terrell Hill, they just finished pouring the foundation and the mounts for it, so that one will start going up also. So that was funded from the American Rescue Plan Act, and that project is going to make significant inroads into our ability to communicate at emergency scenes. We also, this year, with the support of the Board of Selectmen,
implemented a master firefighter job description, which is part of the union collective bargaining agreement with the professional firefighters of Goffstown. And essentially, it's in addition to the title of firefighter, which recognizes the service and skills of firefighters who have requisite knowledge and experience in Goffstown operations, as well as it allows them to seek future promotional positions as they become available. Currently, we have 4 lieutenant positions, and if they're young lieutenants, it could be a number of years before there's any movement within the organization. So the board supported that, and we've put that position into place. Any questions so far?
Joe? Thank you, Peter. So my question is around this, thank you, I think you picked me up. The SAFER grant funding, that $270,000 has now lapsed, the first grant, right? So we have a second grant that's fully funded for $300,000.
Correct.
How do you feel staffing-wise in the department? Are you fully staffed? And also, have we filled all those positions completely? And then I want to ask after that, the overtime line, if we're fully staffed, why are we paying overtime to that extent? Thank you.
Okay. Are we fully staffed? Well, that's a hard question because we're actually only into our second year of having 24-hour coverage and 6 people on duty. I can tell you that they are crazy busy every shift. My first day here, they actually did 13 runs in like 3 or 4 hours. So they're running end to end and circles day to day. The $309,000, we have to designate that specific money to specific people. So is that all 4 years or is it 3 at 100%? 3 years, that'll be fully paid for.
It doesn't decrease in funding like the other grant did, so it's fully funded for the 3.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
Years ago, they used to,
Right.
and it would trickle down. The overtime question is really, if you think about, you now have 24 people working. They have, they're now that they're coming off probation, they have certain levels of certification, and they get vacation, they get sick time, they get personal time. And so in order for us to keep 6 people on duty, we have that overtime line to cover for when people are out.
Okay, and if I could just
Go ahead,
follow up,
Joe.
is there any interest or like with the department with just hiring part-timers to cover those positions? Because obviously like that would be a savings on the town part to have, a few part-timers or fill-in or even, volunteers.
So absolutely. Matter of fact, when I was here 20 years ago, when I was here, we actually had 100 call firefighters and a small cadre of 13 full-timers. And for many years, that's the way it went. Right now, on a department, we have maybe 10 what I call part-time or per diem people. And when they're available, we will bring them in, and that's under the part-time budget to cover shifts when we can. But I'll tell you, like many other fire departments, we can't get people. It's a continual, recruitment effort, and that is part of our goal, is to help supplement, to help offset those costs.
Okay, thank you.
Evelyn?
Yes, thank you. I have another question on the overtime, Chief, because even though there was no budget for it in your EMS, you experienced $43,000 worth of overtime in EMS so far this year.
If I could, can I get through this first, and then we'll focus on that
Sure.
specifically?
But as an addition, do you expect the need for overtime coverage to exceed your budgeted amount this year for fire?
Yes. And I've already exceeded
I
it.
just want to cover the elephant in the room, tell them that we're short people. Can't get them.
Yeah, so,
I mean,
Where they're going.
currently, right today, I have 5 vacancies within the fire department. 2 left about 12 weeks ago. So I had to expend over 1,000 hours of coverage to cover those people that were lost. The City of Manchester Fire Department has just recruited and taken away 3 of our firefighters, one of them that has only been here for 6 months. And so they have now increased our vacancies by 5 people.
There go the hands. Bonnie?
Thank you. Chief, can you talk a little bit about why these 5 had left and what is available to them in other areas that we're lacking here?
Sure. I'll tell you, it's not for the money. This town, the board, negotiated a very improved labor contract over the past couple years because we were at the low end, of the wage scale, so people would leave then. A lot of it is, these are young firefighters. They believe that by going to a big city, they're going to have more action and more fires every day. And it's just the nature of, the young firefighters. One of the people that left was with us, went through the probation, decided he wanted to become a doctor. And that was spurred by his EMS experience.
I just want to add to that, if I might. 2 things about this. This is an ongoing issue statewide, and the town has done exit interviews for all of the employees that we've lost, so we capture this data a little bit. And just to follow up on what the select board was talking about this evening, we had this discussion last night and are writing a letter to the city of Manchester to, vent our frustration with the way that things have been panning out. But it's not just Goffstown that's dealing with this.
They've been taking people from Bedford, Hooksett, surrounding towns too. Manchester had, and I think the chief said, it's not money, because I sat on negotiating and we gave them some decent money to stay, and they want the excitement. I'm a firefighter. I want to be on the hook and ladder or something. I don't know. Hold on, Richard. Evelyn?
Just
Go
one
on,
other
sorry.
question. Was there an addendum or something mentioned in the contract that once they were, we have it for the police department, do they have to stay for a certain length of time, or do they have to pay for their training?
We have talked about that. That was in last night's discussion, and we're going to work with, we're going to try to do something about it. I don't know if we can at this point.
We have it for,
just-
sorry.
We just did the contract, so, but we'll sit with the union, and we can't do it on existing employees, but on future employees, we can do it. Stacy, go ahead.
Thank you, and I think that's a great idea that you guys doing exit interviews. I think that's really important for both police and fire. Does the overtime also include that when they're out on a fire, or out on a call, they also have to stay on that call, because you can't just pull them out?
It does. They
So, I think that's
typically-
something to
they-
think about. You're not just gonna pull somebody responding to an emergency. They're gonna have to
Right.
put in for overtime. Being married to somebody as a first responder, I know that happens quite often, that
Yeah,
they're
they-
stuck out for many hours
They
after. So I
typically work
want people to forget that.
24 hours, get off at 8 a.m.
Right.
But it happens all the
All the
time.
time.
We had some
7:30,
brush fires this year.
7:45, they get an emergency call.
So the overtime isn't just because we need to fill spots, it's also because
Correct.
they're stuck
Yep.
in a call and they have to stay for hours.
Or even call back too. If we have a major emergency, we call them back, and by law, we have to pay them overtime.
Right, okay, thank you.
Anybody else? Go ahead, Chief.
So again, we are trying to maintain a strong recruitment and retention effort in order to try and fill our staffing vacancies as quickly as we can. Next year, we're looking to maintain, service, and repair our fleet of fire vehicles and apparatus. You're going to see under that line that I've increased it. You can imagine 12 new people driving apparatus different ways. Your maintenance costs are going to be higher because no one drives it like they do their Acuras or their Ford, whatever. I'm also continuing to maintain, repair, and upgrade our fire department facilities in order to keep them in a reliable state of operation. This last year, my goal was, we have an HVAC contractor who has come in, serviced all of our HVAC systems. I'm slowly exchanging light switches for automatic light to try and save, electricity. Replaced 20-year-old thermostats with new smart thermostats so we can better at least try to maintain energy costs at some sort of decent level if there is one. We continue to develop our people. This year I am asking to, in the rear of Station 18, and many of you went on the tour with us, during the building of the fire station, there's a piece in the back of the fire station that was meant to be paved, but because of funding, they haven't done it. So if you ever heard of NITPAC, it's just finely ground asphalt, and it just goes everywhere. So this year, my goal is to get that back piece paved. We're looking to purchase some technical rescue equipment for our below rescue capabilities. We'll continue to use our Community Emergency Response Team, CERT. For those of you that have been around a while, Chief, if you remember civil defense, this is the modern era of it. And actually, Goffstown has like 30 volunteers who are on this CERT team. So we use them when we need to. They support police and fire and all kinds of other events. And then under emergency management, which I'm the emergency management director, we are working closely with the Goffstown School District. They are strengthening their emergency response plans, training, and securing of their school facilities. Matter of fact, tonight we're out with the police department doing some active shooter training as a combined joint effort out at the highway facility. My capital improvement program request for next year, we're looking to fund $250,000 in the fire department apparatus capital reserve fund. This is the fund which helps to fund the higher cost fire apparatus when they're due for replacement. And then we're also requesting to replace a 2009 Ford 350 utility vehicle, and our request for that is $70,000. Moving on to page 7. Basically, I took the higher percentage costs and items of increases, and so in our wage and wage-related lines, there was the 3% matrix adjustment that was put in there. The labor contracts, the one we have is good to 2024, right? And then there's very little matrix adjustment in there this year. Our facility maintenance project repairs, it's up by $19,000, and that includes the paving of the back lot, so that's why that one's up. Diesel fuel is based on our usage history and how much we're paying in a fuel contract. Gasoline's down a little too, again, because of the contract we have for fuel. Our part-time wages are down 13.59%, or about $14,000. And the reason that is because it's difficult, for us to get people to work. But we're still carrying, 10 people to try and do it. Overtime pay is up 29.37%, or about $50,000. And it's for a couple of reasons, the increase in calls we talked about, but historically, that line has always gone over by about $80,000. So in an effort to try and bring that closer, so we can have the real true cost of it, we increased it, but we also took some of that overtime and moved it over to the EMS revenue account, okay? And we did that because, as you saw earlier in the graph, we're doing more EMS than we are fire. So with the help of the finance and the town administrator, we balance how much funds we can move over to that enterprise fund so that we make sure it's still building revenue for the cost of EMS in the future. Our longevity went up $800. So my overall increase from 2022 is 6.08%. And if you look at on that bottom graph, it just basically breaks down where the majority of our costs going. And like any public safety agency, our personnel costs are up about 83%. Actually, from my previous experience, that's not a bad number compared to some other numbers I've seen. So you can understand that anything, any remaining funds is for our operational budget, for facilities, repairs, and all those. If you turn to page 8, this is our fiscal '23 EMS budget overview. Our wages and wage-related costs are up 31%. Our part-time wages, again, are down. Our overtime pay, while it says it's up 100%, that is that money that we transferred from the fire budget. And so that's why it shows up as 100%. And then our diesel and our overall increase from fuel. On page 9 is our emergency management budget. Our operating costs are up, our CERT team costs are up, and it's up 50% overall, but that is because I'm doing more with the CERT team. I'm going to create a rehab team. In other words, when we're working at a fire or a long-term incident with PD or during a disaster, there's no way to rehab the firefighters on the scene. Actually, we've depended on our police partners who actually went out, go down to Sully's and get water and all those other types of things. So my plan is, under emergency management and CERT team, is to have the CERT team members become that rehab unit. They've got their trailer, and we're going to set that up so when we have a major fire, whether it's hot or cold, they'll be able to provide that rehab for us. So that's the overview of my budget, and if we want to go down through some lines, we can.
I got line questions. Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
I have a question, Chief. I might have missed it, but line 44,300, under employee development, I see a consistent $18,410 is budgeted, but the numbers in usage seem low.
44,300.
44,300, page 11.
Oops, wait a minute.
you got budgeted for the 2022 of $18,410. Year-to-date, you spent $40.
I was overlooking at highways. I liked his number better. Yes, it is budgeted at 18,000. Actually, I have 2 individuals who are currently taking college courses, and at least for this year, they have not submitted their reimbursement requests for the courses they're taking.
Follow-up, Chief? Were they also taking courses last year? Because the budget was the same last year and only used $900.
I do know there were 1 or 2 of them, and I believe the previous chief may have been taking some courses too.
I think the previous chief also put in the budget, the fire department has a program where they will fund paramedic school.
Correct.
And as that's a rolling admission, it's a very intensive course, but I think the fire department has always tried to make that available to members at any point, so that's why they've carried that high number in the training.
And as a matter of fact, too, I have someone that is enrolled in the paramedic program. It's $10,500, and it doesn't start until January 6th, but we are going to encumber the money from there. And then I have a second paramedic that wants to start in the new year.
Thank you, that would explain the higher number.
Kelly?
Thank you. I have the same question for 44,150 clothing and uniforms, 44,330 physical examinations, and 47,950 for turnouts. For some of that stuff we bill at the end of the year, but.
Okay, so we do our physical once a year,
Right.
and we basically just started them a couple months ago. And that's also physicals for new hires. So that'll be being expended here towards the end of the year. We still have people taking physicals.
And then I'm assuming clothing and uniforms and turnouts we'll see that be used for winter?
I'm sorry, what?
Clothing and uniforms and turnouts, we'll see an increase to those lines for winter gear?
Yes.
Okay, that's what I thought.
We're
Thank
just
you.
ordering the winter gear now.
Also, under emergency management, the food line, page 12, line 44,320, is that for the trailer to to do rehab like you stated? Is that what
It
that's
is.
for?
It is.
So, we haven't used the $250 from last year, right?
Not according to this, we haven't.
Yeah, and that's also there in case we have a EOC activation or any long-term. So that basically carries every year unless we don't use it.
Okay, thank you. And then on page 23 for the EMS budget, again, I know most of these things, like supplies and everything, we try to replenish at the end of the year. But we're way underspent in all of these lines. Do we foresee, I wasn't able to compare all of them, but do we see any deductions in that, or are we kind of gonna make level fund EMS?
Well, if you recall, the EMS is the enterprise fund. So any money that is not spent just stays in there for EMS costs. Correct?
Evelyn?
Okay, so on the other side of the EMS funding, I know that for a couple years there, we were getting accustomed to the new billing system, the new company. Has their collections increased at all? Are we?
The EMS billing and collection system is, as you probably know from over the years, there's huge gaps it depends on how collections go. So throughout the year, you may be doing well with collections, and then there's a delay because of not being, people just aren't paying. But I think
Check with Danielle, could give us a
Danielle
better
can
idea.
speak a little more about the billing piece.
Good evening, everyone. So last year, we did have a very extensive discussion about EMS. I am happy to report that it is continuing upwards, but it is a slow incline. It's not so much the billing process having switched, it's more the billing process itself. So we have to send out those initial bills, we have to allow 30 to 90 days for that insurance company to respond, then it goes back to secondary insurance, another 30 to 90 days, then it goes to the customer. So there's this continual process that kind of bogs down just the collection itself. But we are seeing an increase as the fire department's gotten more diligent about how they submit those reports. And the billing company has been right on top of gathering the information and getting them out. We are seeing an increase in the revenues. It's not as significant as we'd like to see. There are still quite a bit of the bills that get written off due to like Medicare and Medicaid programs where we have no choice, but they're contractually obligated rates. So that's the biggest hit to the revenues that we see. We have continued to try to shift costs to EMS that we can. However, with this year's proposed budget, we're estimating that this is the most that this EMS fund can handle at this time unless we see a drastic change in the revenues in 2023.
How much is in the enterprise fund at this time?
How much is in it
Yeah.
as a balance? Obviously a moving target for cash reconciliation. We're anticipating annual revenue of about $540,000. And as of our last projection, we were anticipating a return to the fund of about $65,000 to $70,000 at the end of this year, to be determined by what the expenses are in the next few months.
Anybody else? Fred Platt.
Yes, if it's a particular company, insurance company or two who are being, I'm missing the word, but delayed in the process, could we file a lawsuit?
No, it's not a particular company from my records. Is that correct, Chief?
Right.
Yeah, it's all of the companies. It's really the process itself that exists in the medical billing industry.
Especially with, Medicare, Medicaid, and that whole system and its complications and stuff. I think we have good luck with the billing company. We've got they've got a pretty good collection rate.
They do have a good collection.
On that same vein, a couple of years ago, or maybe 3 or 4 years ago now, we had a company that wasn't doing a real great job, and we switched, what was that, 3 years ago?
About 3 years.
Yeah, about 3 years ago, and they're doing a much better job than the other company did, so.
And as Danielle said, when we take a patient in, we do our best to get all their insurance information, and everything's transmitted electronically now. So that obviously helps move it a lot faster, too. We used to have to get a stack of calls, mail them, to the billing company, and that was even worse then. So
Evelyn, you had a question?
I do. So this new company is obviously, you're having better experience with them, with their follow-up and their secondary insurances and that.
Yes. Yep.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Chief, you still have over $7,000 left in your facilities repair line. What do you still have left to do? Well, it's actually more than 7,000.
I think I have to do some overhead door servicing and maintenance on all the overhead doors and all the fire stations, that types. And some of it's for any unexpected repairs that may come up.
Okay. You budgeted 23.9, you spent 16.1, so like I said, 7,000, but then you're jumping it from 23 to 42. You must have something major beside that little bit of paving.
The paving, we're estimating around 25,000.
That much.
Yep.
Anybody else? I'm sorry, Frank.
How long is the current fuel contract you're on good for, do you know?
Danielle?
Please say forever.
I'm sorry.
That's fuel contract?
That's the one we just signed.
Oh, no, it's, we renew, depending on the type of fuel, we renew either every 3 years or every year, some of them.
So this one is good for another year or 2 years?
Was it for gasoline?
Gasoline and diesel.
Okay. Let me get you the figure.
Okay.
When you got anything else while Danielle's looking that up?
I just want to say that we see a lot of ambulance service in Medville, but thank you, it's not to my house.
Yeah.
Keep it up, Freddie.
That should always be the goal. It always should be the goal.
Careful, those are famous last words.
Okay, so the commodity outline that we have, so our gasoline is locked in through September of 2022, and then we'll have to go back to bid.
No, September 23, right?
I'm sorry.
So we just,
September of 2023, and our diesel is also the same through 2023. We had a 2-year agreement for both of those commodities last year.
Any other questions? You got anything else, Chief?
Just to tell the board, I think just about everyone went on the station tours with us, but if you didn't make it, please give me a call. I'll be glad to take you through and show you the facilities.
Thank you.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
Next up would be the Director of Public Works.
and we're timing in starting now.
He's lucky it wasn't last night, right before the game.
Oh, man. Good evening. Did everybody get a handout before I get started?
What handout does it have?
Just
This one right here.
Oh, I don't have that. Thank you.
Orange, like pumpkins.
Just one.
Melanie, you got him coming in?
Yes.
Okay, good evening. So, as you may have heard, I've received some peer pressure and maybe some from the table as well, so brevity is key tonight. So, I'll give you a quick overview of the budget, some of the big budget drivers for 2023, talk about a couple of projects, and then open up for any questions about any individual lines. So, if you look at the handout, I've got a cover page there with kind of a comparison of 2022's budget with my 2023 request. We've got 4 budgeted divisions in Public Works. Cemetery Division, which is 1 full-time staff, and then we have 4 summer seasonal staff to augment for the prime mowing and cleanup season. The Cemetery Division works in cooperation with the cemetery trustees, elected cemetery trustees, to maintain, of course, the town cemeteries. Got a 7.5% programmed increase. We can get into some of the reasons why coming up. But it's a small budget, so it sounds a little worse than the overall hit of $13,000-ish. Largest division by far in Public Works is our Highway Administration and Engineering, all lumped together in that budget. That's 24 full-time staff plus 6 seasonal. We have 2 engineering interns in the summer and 4 highway seasonal workers, basically laborers or flaggers for job sites. Sometimes if there's a large cemetery cleanup for an event or something, we can flex those summer staff to be all with cemeteries maybe for a few days, or vice versa. If it's a slow cemetery day, they can be added to the highway force. So I've got a projected 3.8% increase in the highway administration budget, a fleet maintenance, our division there, we have 3 full-timers and 1 part-time admin assistant for the mechanic. I've got a very small increase there, 0.1%. And our fleet maintenance staff, probably should go back, I guess, the highway administration engineering, as the name might entail, it takes care of all the administration of the department, customer service-oriented permit issuances, all the engineering for both town projects, as well as support for planning board, select board, obviously. If the zoning board needs something, sometimes we get involved with that as well. Conservation Commission to a lesser degree. Our engineering staff also manages the town's stormwater. You might hear it referred to as the MS4 permit, which is Municipal Separate Storm Sewer System. Basically, EPA's Clean Water Act in effect at the local level for towns and cities that have storm sewer systems that collect street water and put it into public water bodies. So our engineering staff manages that, and that is involved over the years. That's ramped up, and right now that is involved with tracking impairments, then Goffstown water bodies, rivers and streams, lakes, and then heavily sampling areas that we know that have impairments or areas that might become impaired over time to track the quality of water. Also responding to any spills and trying to maintain our own infrastructure to limit the amount of contaminants that go into the water bodies. So anything environmentally related usually is in this division. And of course, highway, the 800-pound gorilla in the DPW, so everybody's favorite, the plow drivers, our road construction crews, tree cutting, brush chipping, sign maintenance, all that extra kind of stuff, voting booth setups, whatever, if somebody needs something moved at town hall and they don't quite have the muscle, we'll try to help out. So basically the town's workforce, if we need a flex, comes out of that division. So our fleet maintenance division takes care of both DPW fleet as well as the remainder of the town departments for the most part. Some get sent out to, a Grapponi Ford or something like that if there's a manufacturer recall or a difficult to diagnose problem. But we try to take care of as much as we can in-house. That ensures a pretty good response time for especially the emergency services to get equipment back in promptly. And then finally, the solid waste division, we have 6 full-timers, a supervisor, a scale house operator, a transfer station attendant, and then 3 drivers. 2 that operate the curbside trucks, 1 trash, 1 recycling, and then 1 long-haul driver. We self-haul from our transfer station. We bring our trash north to Bethlehem, to the landfill, and we bring our single-stream recycling to Charlestown, Mass. For the sort facility there, because we're single-stream. In between those runs, which are multiple times a week, he makes short haul trips to the scrap metal recycling facility. Construction and demo goes to a separate place. So a few of those little short hauls throughout the week. But primarily, he's on the road very early in the morning to try to beat traffic and get up north or get down to Boston before the rush hour. So solid waste division, we've got the biggest increase of the department there, 12.8% on a percentage basis anyway. And then, and largely, I guess I should take one step back. The overall theme of the budget really this year is commodities. So as you might imagine, as the price of asphalt or the price of gasoline or petroleum products go, so go a department that heavily uses all those. So asphalt costs go up, we get less paving done, but we burn a lot of diesel fuel and a lot of gasoline each year. Mainly as we're coming into this time of year, plow season, truck can run almost 24 hours in some cases. So we do use a lot of fuel and a lot of supplies. The other piece with the solid waste increase is that the cost to dispose of everything has gone up and recycling revenues are down. I'll get into that a little bit more in the next slide. But and then finally, just a snapshot of what our anticipated revenues. We have a very small, right now, budgeted increase, about $5,000 from last year. We do have a larger increase in a few lines, but it's sort of masked by a reduction. We had some bridge aid revenue, I think, that was built into that 22 money. That was just last year's budget. We also will likely have some transfer station rate increases this year, but because I haven't brought those to the board yet, I didn't program those in for our planned revenues. But right now, we're not keeping pace with the cost of disposal on pretty much across the board. So when the board reviews fees at the next opportunity, we'll have some increases, I'm sure, for our scale house fees. And then just final note, no new services are planned, no new employees planned for the department this year. We do have one slight reduction in service. I'm going to be recommending, once our current household hazardous waste grant period is satisfied, either because we've received full reimbursement for our grant or the grant period ends, I'll be requesting that the select board revisit offering household hazardous waste disposal for non-residents. So right now, we're, I think, the only community still in New Hampshire that regularly accepts household hazardous waste, no business waste, from all communities around the state. They just call, make an appointment. Right now, we're 2 or 3 weeks out. We're limited somewhat by the amount of space that we have and the number of people who can accept that waste, who are qualified to do that. But we're paying quite a bit of money to dispose of that. And it's becoming, not a full-time job yet, but it could become, the more word spreads that we accept at any time, instead of the quarterly pickups that a regional planning commission might have, or a monthly pickup that like Manchester or Nashville might have. If somebody knows they can call and come in next week to drop off, that sounds pretty good to me, especially if I close on a house and there's a rack full of paint that I want to get rid of, either before I sell or right after I buy. So as word gets out, it's becoming more and more busy, and it's really becoming unmanageable for that out-of-town waste. So while I think we all agree it's a good program, I'm just not sure it's worth our extra effort to start talking about adding staff if we're going to manage that properly. So that would be the only, I think, planned reduction in service for 2023, unless I'm talked out of it. Okay, so on to the next slide, major 23 cost drivers. So I tried to kind of pick a cutoff point of about 0.1% of my overall, $5.4 million budget. So anything about $5,000 or more. Full-time wages, we've got the 34.5 full-time equivalents plus the seasonal staff. But really, full-time wages was the big change. I didn't change any of the hourly rates for seasonal for 23. So we've got $75,000 across the whole department between the union contract increases and then the planned matrix adjustment and step increases for non-union. Recycling removal, unfortunately, recycling as the last few years has been extremely volatile. I know we've talked about the committee in the past, but also during the tours, and maybe if others tuned into a library presentation last year. Just as an example, we were in a revenue earlier in the year. So this summer, I think it was a small revenue, but it was about $1 or $2 a ton every time we brought recycling to Charlestown. Years ago, we could consistently plan on $35, $40 a ton revenue. Right now, it's 80 plus actually charge. So we've
one charge.
So we're over $80 this month per ton. So 80-time increase, 80-fold increase per ton in the course of a couple months, and it's literally the spike is ridiculous from month to month. That contract is based on whatever the commodity rates are for single stream mixed recycling, primarily paper based. That's the bulk of the single stream waste stream or recycling stream. So as goes paper and recyclables, there goes our recycling rate. So I've tried to be a little conservative. I've budgeted for $50 per ton. We dispose of just over 2,000 tons a year of recycling, or I should say we transfer 2,000 tons of recycling a year. So I budgeted at $50 a ton, trying to pick a spot that's not quite midpoint from the average of the last 12 months, but your guess is as good as mine. Tomorrow, we could get a rate letter for November that's, back down around $20 or $30. It's really going crazy. And nobody really has a great handle on, forecasting. Supply chain issues and all the like. Cardboard drove it for a little while. It's kind of all over the place. So I did the best I can there, but right now at $50, which is up from last year, that's a $63,000 increase for that line. As you've heard before, gas and diesel, we certainly use a lot between highway and solid waste, and those contracts are locked in through September, and then we go to rack rate unless we can lock in something. So I try to be a little conservative with the September to December usage, and that's for highway. That's where I use a good bulk of our fuel is in the winter months. So that would be a $42,000 increase. Solid waste fleet maintenance, if you look back at the actuals in that division, we have, that's for the tractor trailer trucks that haul the waste and recycling, the trailers, the live floor trailers that you might have heard, these, movable floors that help pack the waste or the recycling in. But also the curbside trucks, which are pretty expensive pieces of equipment, and as you can imagine, the automated arms, there's a lot to go wrong there. So between the complexity of the vehicles and the amount of time they're on the road, we've seen an uptick in the fleet maintenance costs for those particular vehicles the last few years. So I've added to that budget to try to meet our actuals.
Adam, does $30K in that line go into solid waste?
Yes. Yep. So that's, of the solid waste change, that's 30,000 of it.
Okay.
On the flip side, the fleet maintenance costs for the rest of the department have actually been a little bit under budget the last couple of years, so I brought that down, not quite as far.
Well, I don't get that because your first page doesn't recognize that.
Let's see. So I'm sorry, not the fleet division cost, but the fleet maintenance line within the fleet.
Because fleet maintenance here, you got it at 560 with a 1% increase.
Yes, sir. So that's the whole division. So my whole division's up 0.1%, but once we get to the fleet division, that budget line for the actual cost of maintenance. So, parts, any charges at Croponi or otherwise, that particular budget line has been low, so that one's down. Overall, they're up a little bit, but the actual cost for the maintenance repairs themselves are down. So solid waste fleet maintenance up. Salt, with the new state contract, it's about 10% higher than last year. It's up to $79 a ton. We use just shy of, I think, 3,000 tons a year of salt. So that reflects just that price change in the state contract. And I try to do a moving average of that. Your guess is as good as mine. It's going to be an easy year or a heavy winter, but we try to pick the moving average. Bulky waste and construction and demo costs of disposal of that have gone up, and lately anyway, the quantities have been pretty high. So once we started to sort of pull out of the pandemic and everything went gangbusters and infrastructure money started to hit the streets, a lot of construction. So our disposal costs across the board, but especially the amount of construction and demo debris has been high. Signs the last few weeks that it might be tapering off, but it's too early to see if that's a real trend or not, and if that's going to continue into next year. So best I could, I tried to target what I think it's going to be. I've added $17,000 for line striping. We pay, traditionally we've paid for long line striping, so they come in and they can paint a better straight line than we can with a truck-mounted, laser-guided paint machines. And then we've tried to handle all the handwork ourselves in-house with a small walk-behind paint machine. Handwork being, our crosswalk ladders that we have throughout town, any stencil work, the majority of parking lot striping, smaller stuff, shorter lines. You can kind of close one eye and it looks real straight. Unfortunately, we've had some continue to have staffing issues. Everybody else, 50-year low unemployment rate is going to do that. So we are trying to augment as best we can where we can. And one of the items that made sense this year was to pay the line stripers to do some more of that handwork. We did a little ourselves, but we farmed out as much as we could, so they can knock out it a little faster if they do it near the same time when they do the long lines, but it does come at a cost to offset that. So I've added some funds for next year to continue that practice, because I don't see the full strength DPW, in the short term anyway.
So you're still going to be doing some of it?
I'd like to. Ideally,
we just bought a new paint trailer, 2 years ago?
We did, yep, we did. So we have pretty good size, stencils, paint machine. The previous trailer, we had a little trailer, was so short that for somebody to heft a 50-plus pound bucket hunched over was a backbreaker. So we got a taller one to fit the apparatus. So yeah, the idea is we could do as much as possible, but I do anticipate that's a good area where we can have them maybe take all the stop bars in Pinardville, because that's the other piece that we do is all the stop lines, and they can move them down Mass Road pretty quick. So that's the idea there. Solid waste disposal, that's a contractual increase under our trash landfilling tipping fees, $16,000 there. $7,500 increase in the cemetery facilities line. If you look into that budget line, it looks like it's underspent for this year. The cemetery trustees last year, about this time, requested to put some money in that line for a columbarium. So as part of the West Lawn expansion project, there's plans for a columbarium, which is an area for cremains to be stored. And they have, I think, one quote in hand, and they're waiting for 2 more before they place that order for this year. But it's kind of a phased project. They had hoped, I think their goal was 3 years in a row, they were going to ask for money for columbarium build-out. So Module 1, the first year, which has a certain number of cremains, burial spots, and then the second and third year module to increase it to the full size for the plans. Solid waste, I've added $5,000 in I think it's the operation supplies is the official name for the line, but that is where we purchase our curbside barrels from. We've been short on curbside barrels. We're almost out currently. There's been housing turnover for sure, which usually lends itself to barrels being either lost or mistreated. But also with new construction, we send out barrels. Any 1 or 2 family houses get a barrel. And the other piece that's working against us is the age of the existing barrels. Those were all purchased around the same time to start up the program. A lot of them have been turned over now, but as they sit outside, the UV rays degrade the plastic and they age, and then either the gripper, when it grabs them, can crack the barrels, or people hauling them back up to the house, or the kids knock them over, or the plows knock them over. Over time, they just can't be repaired anymore. We do buy a good stock of lids and wheels. The parts that we can replace, we do, but when the barrel's totally trashed, the barrel itself, we have to replace it. So I've added $5,000 there just based on...
With the new units that are being put into town, do we still supply them with recycling bins?
So we haven't had any requests lately. Trying to think of the last. We had a 3 or a 4 unit condo, not an official condominium association that you would normally see. It's kind of a shared driveway situation, I think was the last one this year. But other than that, I can't think of any that have come in and asked. I think that'd be a discussion with the board, how you'd want to handle that on a larger association that's asked.
We do it for other associations.
Yes, right. We don't do it for all, but historically, there's been a couple that have had it.
Fred?
That maintain it.
I hate to ask this question because I was chair of Solid Waste Commission, and I was instrumental, among others, of getting solid waste, the single stream recycling going in this town. But considering the costs you're facing, is it time to pull the plug?
So this question came up a couple years ago when it first spiked, when the China stopped accepting waste below or above a 0.1% contamination rate or so. The problem is if we bring recyclable materials to the landfill, we don't pay the landfill rate anymore. They say, well, recycling weighs less per cubic yard of space in the landfill. Therefore, 1 ton of recycling takes up more landfill space than 1 ton of trash, which is heavier per yard. So they gave us a new rate, which then changes the math again and kind of still puts that out of reach. Once that behavior is gone, it's hard to get it back. Right now, we're at about 1/3 of our waste, our traditional waste stream, the curbside waste stream, about 1/3 is diverted to recycling. I'd like to bring that up if we can. But I think if we ever made the decision to, send it to the landfill, that kind of reinforces the thoughts that some people have never agreed with trying to recycle. They think it's not worth it ever. And then if the revenue came back, or if it swings next month and it drops $20 a ton, now we're not going to get those people back. Those habits take a while to come back. I think this is a bigger discussion later date probably, but landfill space in the state is running out unless new landfills are permitted. So there's going to be some big discussions.
Put an incinerator over on Shirley Hill Road, right?
I don't want to go there.
Yeah, we've been there.
I've been there.
And then I said a good three for last. Got some significant reductions. Brush disposal, as you might recall, we purchased the air curtain burner. I just received word that it's scheduled for delivery hopefully next week. So it's going to take a little bit to get that connected, get the permitting lined up and get it commissioned, but hopefully we can start saving money right off the bat in 2023. So I've reduced that line down to $2,000. That line is also used for stump disposal. Per solid waste rules in the state, we can't accept any logs larger than 5 inches from residents. I know we probably do every now and then, but stumps also can't go into the burner. They shouldn't anyway. So we usually bring those off-site. So kept a little bit of money in there for stump disposal. As I mentioned, fleet maintenance, the actual repair line in the fleet maintenance division's budget has got a reduction. The household hazardous waste line reduction I mentioned. And then one item I forgot, Danielle and I had spoke about adding a new line for the solid waste division. She did add the line, but I didn't remember to put money in it. So if I could direct your attention to page 16 of 26. I'd like to ask if you could do a pen and ink change to add $5,000 to line 53450. It's the third from the bottom in solid waste, equipment rental. And if you notice the line right above that, 53430, equipment maintenance supplies, year-to-date is pretty high compared to where I budgeted that last year. Was brought to my attention, and one of those things sometimes when you see it, you're like, duh, why didn't this come up before? Our solid waste driver, our long haul driver, after a snowstorm, traditionally would climb a ladder to get up on top of a tractor trailer to clear off the tractor trailer so he doesn't lose his CDL license for violating Jessica's law as he's driving down the road. We don't own any, whiz-bang bus company, mechanical brush drive-through apparatus or anything like that. So said, time out. We don't have any fall protection. Said there's no cage surrounds, OSHA field day sort of thing. So I think one fall accident probably pays for 10 years worth of equipment rental in this case, and God forbid something worse. But so we started renting a Nifty lift. So the Nifty lift stays on site from East Point Rentals, and after every storm, that's used to clear off the trucks the trailers that have to immediately haul, and then as time allows, the yard person, while the driver is out making other runs, will try to clear the other trailers, so everything's ready to go. Sometimes that's a never-ending cycle if it's still snowing, but yes.
Thank you. Could you just repeat that number one more time for me?
5,000 would be the request.
Okay. On.
Oh, I'm sorry, the budget line?
450, you said?
Yes, the third from the bottom, equipment rental, 53450. The Tom Cruise Mission Impossible thing didn't pan out. Okay, so I think that takes care of that. I'm not doing too well in my brevity here, I'm sorry. I do have some capital requests for 2023 on the next slide. For 2023, I'm requesting $855,000 for vehicles and equipment. That constitutes a replacement for a 2008 bucket loader, a 2004 tractor, solid waste tractor, a 2004 roll-off trailer, which carries our solid waste roll-off canisters, some of those metals in the construction demo, a 2008 one of our live floor trailers, and a 2011 Bobcat loader. Our usual plan is to cycle those through first the recycling building, which has a Bobcat stationed in it all day long to move the recycling from both the curbside trucks and from people that come into the transfer station into the packing compactor to load the trailers. And then we have two Bobcats that go with the construction sites for construction purposes. Usually we bring the new one into solid waste, move the move the cycle the other way, and then sometimes we can get revenue from New Hampshire, the beautiful grants for recycling-related equipment. So we usually try to, anytime we do a purchase, we'll try to apply for it and get a few $1,000s in revenue. So that's the plan for vehicles and equipment. The 2023 projects and road plan CIP items totaled just over $2,070,000. That is more by a fair shot from what I recommended to Capital Improvement Planning Committee. They moved up $400,000 for a solar, roof and solar project at the highway garage. So if we want to trip into the next, I'm sorry, I shouldn't give short shrift to the road plan. So big chunk of our projects every year in the CIP is our road plan budget. So requesting the same that we've asked the last few years, $1.6 million. Although asphalt's a little bit more expensive than it was when we first got to that $1.6 million level, it's been tricky to pin down. We haven't had a normal year yet since we've brought it to that level, so I still think it's a good amount. We normally encumber funds into the following year for top coats. If we rebuild the road, we'll base pave that year and we'll add the top coat of pavement the next year. So normally we encumber enough to cover all those in case there's a default budget situation, but I didn't see a need to increase that until we regularly start hitting that cap. So that's enough usually to fund between 8 and 10% of our road network in any given year. Coming up, big ticket stuff. Don't hold me to this because the road plan is not finalized for 23 yet, but we're looking at continuing and maybe finishing the Pinardville hillside neighborhoods that we started with Warren Ave a couple of years ago. So Holly and Lindsay, maybe Serenitas if it gets cut off from this year. Laurel Street, East Union, we've got a final phase to do there. Laurier Street, Mass Road is a pretty good one in Pinardville. It's due for an overlay, a regular maintenance overlay of our main roads, and that was last done in 2012. We try to target about every 10 years on main roads if we can to keep our good roads good. But Mass Road, based on the width, of course, multiple lanes, and then the length of it, is a pretty good chunk of change just for an overlay. We also have granite curbing throughout most of that, so in order to not lose our curb reveal, which helps with a few things, pedestrian safety, stormwater control, keeping street sediment in the road, and keeping the cars in the road. In order not to lose that curb reveal, normally you have to mill the old asphalt out a certain amount and then put back that same amount, and you'll keep your same curb reveal. One of the things involved with that, though, is we're trying to take care of as many pedestrian sidewalk improvements as we can at the same time, hopefully in advance of course. So a lot of the tip downs, if there are any, at the side streets are not up to ADA standards. Anytime you rebuild significantly enough anyway, you're supposed to try to get everything as close to ADA as you can. So we've got some money that hasn't been spent this year for sidewalk maintenance. We've got engineering study on the second half of Mass Road down by Pinard Street to look at some curbing changes there and potentially a center lane reduction just at the town line. We've got some, trying to take a look at as many of the tip down areas that need those improvements and try to take care of those if we can prior to the maintenance overlay of Mass Road. And then the other big ticket items for next year, hoping to get to our maintenance overlays. We started last year on Back Mountain, or this current year on Back Mountain Road, but we need to finish the end of it. We had a big culvert, stone box culvert at the end that had to be rebuilt. So we'd like to finish the overlay of Back Mountain, and then Mountain Road itself is also due. That was last done, I think, in 2008, at least the oldest section. So we've got a good chunk of that, and those are pretty long roads. Once you get on them, you don't realize how much asphalt that is. And then Tibbetts Road's another main that was last done in 2010. So a couple of big main roads, a couple of neighborhood streets, and trying to spread the love around the town as best we can. Let's see, I promised to talk about the solar. I got one last slide after this next one. So kind of the last couple of years I've tried to give you sort of an idea of your tax, where your tax payments go as far as DPW goes. This probably isn't even up to date with the most current decision by the board, so I'm sorry, but it's close enough. Median home value, I think assessed value anyway, not the median home sale recently, but the median assessed value is $265,850 in town, I think. That would make an actual annual property tax bill of about $7,000. The municipal portion of that, so everything that you're not paying to the schools or the state or the county, is about $2,300. Of that, about $780 goes to DPW. Of that, $17 goes to the cemeteries and grounds, common and all the like. About $310 highway admin and engineering, so all your plowing and all that. $52 a year to fleet maintenance. $130 a year for curbside, solid waste disposal, hazardous waste disposal. $79 a year for equipment and capital vehicle investments, and $192 for road and capital investments, clean energy, if you include the solar project this year. So I don't think that's too bad, considering what you would pay for curbside somewhere else, or have your plow guy do your driveway 15 or 20 times a year. And then the final slide I had for you was, I had asked, for budgeting purposes, asked the Solar Revision Energy to come up with a couple of scenarios that if we installed solar panels at the highway garage, what that would look like, both from a cash outlay perspective and then a recoup period. They gave me sort of three of the most common scenarios that towns are participating in. One would be an outright purchase. They estimated a couple $100,000 for the solar panels themselves, just over $200,000. That's, May 22 money, so who knows what that's inflated to already. But our roof would also have to be surveyed and either repaired or shored up if there is any issues with additional loading, but that's part of the project. Any repairs would have to be extra, so that's why the request was for $400,000. It was kind of a worst case, planning for a full roof, resurfacing before the project. But anyway, so a little over $200,000 for the solar panels themselves. You could do an outright purchase. They have a couple of power purchase agreements where somebody else takes advantage of tax credits. You pay them slightly less than we would pay Eversource for the same amount of electricity for a certain period. The graph down at the bottom left sort of shows the three options. There's one where there's no upfront cost to the town, no buyout cost to the town, but it's a long-term power purchase agreement. A 40-year agreement, so you start to see real savings, once that investors recoup their payback period. But then the other two options are pretty similar for a final, for a 40-year savings. One where we would purchase up front, and one where we would buy out at year 6, which is after the depreciation, really, for the equipment's taken hold. So whoever this investor is, they get their tax benefit. We pay them a little less per kilowatt hour, and then as soon as they've been able to fully depreciate the asset, they sell it to the town at a reduced cost, and now we can take it for the remainder of its life. And they plan about a 40-year life for the solar panels. So those last two options are pretty similar in the overall savings to the town after 40 years. He's kind of target about $500,000 to $600,000 in savings over that 40-year span, based on our current consumption. A lot of things go into that, but big takeaway is the more energy you can use on the meter side of the solar array, the better. Once you send, the net metering is allowed, and they've increased those, as you might have heard last year, but the rates. But the more power you send to Eversource, they take their cut, and then the distribution, all that comes out of it. So if we can offset as much energy as possible before it gets to the meter, straight from the panel, in other words, to the highway garage, or if we were able to do it correctly, straight to the highway garage and the transfer station, between those two places, we spend about $30,000 a year in electricity. So I talked to the board a few months ago, asked them what they'd like me to put into CIP at the time for the amount. Would we like to pursue the zero out-of-pocket power purchase agreement? Would we like to pursue the 6-year buyback, or the fully upfront purchase plus the cost of roof repairs? The board said I better start at the whole amount. So $400 was the amount we put into CIP, planning for a fully purchased project, and including any roof repairs needed. So that's what you see, and that's what CIP carried through and brought up to this year. So that's what's included in the budget.
Go ahead, Fred.
If you pursue the zero up front, or the 6-year buyout, is the contract locking the supplier in? What's behind that question is, right now, it's paid, the kilowatt hours are paid default rate, which is essentially retail. And they're pushing the legislature to drop that closer to wholesale, reducing the value. And who's stuck under that circumstances, the town, or is the supplier?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that.
Joe?
Thank you, Peter. Another question I have is regarding like the upkeep. So if we buy it out and we buy them, like purchase them up front, does the company have to maintain them for a certain number of years? How much does that cost? Or if we have to maintain them, what that costs? Because I was under the impression, maybe this is like misinformation, but like it costs a lot to keep those up if they go down. And like with supply chain issues and where these panels are created, is that going to put an undue burden on town? So if you have any numbers like that, that would be helpful.
I can certainly dig into that a little bit more. I think the number they gave me was a limited 10-year warranty, and then 40-year expected life. But beyond that, I'm not, I don't know if they've got any, typical O&M cost type thing.
So if they go down year 11, we're not getting any savings, and we're in the hole for if we don't purchase them up front.
Right, without getting them fixed. They did build in, there is an optional O&M plan that you can purchase. As of May, anyway, it was $1,000 a year after a buyout. So if we went with the I don't know if they would do it for the buyout initially, but for the 6-year buyout plan, you could then continue to pay a O&M fee per year. I presume to guarantee the maintenance.
I mean, $1,000 a year at the cost of these, I feel like you would have to at that point, right?
Yeah, I would think.
I'd like to know kind of those numbers if you have them.
Okay.
Melanie?
I have just a quick question, Adam. Can you tell me, was there any conversation had about storage, retaining those extra kilowatts instead of putting them out to the utility company?
So I hadn't included that. That, of course, would be a good option. We recently applied for a EV grant for a curbside truck and didn't really have enough information to pull the trigger and say we want to be the guinea pig for the whole Northeast and have the first electric curbside truck. But part of that project would have included a charging station. Sort of the next level, though, once you start getting into that, when you're trying to power vehicles from the sun, is okay, let's, like you said, harness as much as we can and store. I don't necessarily have any data at all on how much that even costs for an industrial sized battery setup. It's the kind of thing I can certainly investigate if it's something we want to pursue for sure.
Thank you.
Anybody else? Frank?
You mentioned before that we are one of the very few that aren't charging for hazardous waste disposal for out-of-town residents.
We do charge. There's a separate rate, so non-residents are free up to the first 20 pounds. 20 gallons or 100 pounds. So residents don't pay for the first visit or two a year.
Okay.
Non-residents pay day one if they bring anything in, and they have a separate rate. It's a little higher.
Okay, and you were saying that, and I'm paraphrasing here, that you see that as increasing and that may be a potential big area of liability?
Yes, so the piece that we do, which others don't, is we allow it. So we have a daily, by appointment, but in theory, every day we're open. If somebody had to, it was emergency or whatever, we do accept household hazardous waste.
Right.
It's not a quarterly pickup type of thing. And the more word gets out about that, the more we've seen the volumes pick up. And we're paying $5,000, $6,000, $7,000 a quarter for a company now to come in and repackage and ship and track and carry the liability of that hazardous waste until it's at its next destination. And right now we're not even close with revenue that we're getting from out-of-towners. But more importantly, it's the time involved with setting all these appointments up and then taking, right now it's either the scale house operator or if we're lucky, the ground attendant can try to handle some of it. But you have to be certified as a hazardous waste coordinator to do it, and we just don't have the hands to constantly be with somebody in the hazardous waste building when people are lining up at this, this
So it's $5,000 to $7,000 a month, it's increased time, energy. Is your recommendation, or what you would recommend, that we, A, just stop it, or B, start charging a commensurate level of what it's costing the residents of Goffstown?
My preference would be to make it resident only by appointment. If the select board wanted to maybe set up, when we do our quarterly pickup, when the company or whoever comes to get ours, if they wanted to allow us to tell out-of-towners, hey, but if you come on this day, once a quarter, we're going to also have a pickup. That's kind of maybe a middle ground.
Yeah.
But there's other places where people can go around the state for quarterly pickups.
Right.
So I'm not sure it's a huge benefit to most everybody. The real thing they see now is, I can call you today and maybe next week get a drop-off.
Right, it's the convenience of it.
Right. And just increasing the cost certainly helps and makes sense. We ought to be, every time we do a fee update, we try to zero in on those, but it's becoming a problem, just how much is coming in. We've had to shut off earlier and earlier each quarter now as we fill these Gaylord containers with material. There's only so much we can take anyway. So now we're starting to feel the crunch both on our end, but also for residents of town that want to set up an appointment. I'm sorry, we're full until the next pickup.
Right.
So it's kind of.
And it's the Department of Public Works for Goffstown, not for random hazardous material drop-offers. So, I get it. Okay.
It's a nice way to get that out of the waste stream, but I don't think it's worth adding a position to handle it.
Right.
Unless the board wants to raise the rates right through the roof and then hire somebody to be totally funded, I guess we could do that.
Just a follow-up question, too. You mentioned the brush disposal burner. I have to admit, I don't know a lot about brush disposal burners, but there's any chance we can put the solid waste, like the paper or cardboard, in there, and then would that burn enough to make it worthwhile without causing a problem to the burner?
We cannot. The air permit is for brush only, or will be for brush only. The finalized permit kind of happens after you've had it online for a while, but technically it's an incinerator because it's a unit that does burn brush, which is considered a byproduct or waste, but it's not a trash burner. You have to have some additional air scrubber technologies, and it's definitely a permit process that would be pretty cumbersome for us to try to get. That may, though, as we talk about worst case scenario going forward with landfill space, that might be one of the answers. Crystal ball time. Communities have smaller waste energy plants right on site. Not outside the realm of possibility. They don't have to. Obviously, they're putting a bunch of gas into the air. If it's clean, it's still greenhouse gas. So, who knows what the future's going to bring with those? But for right now, this is only brush. Not even really supposed to load it with a lot of wood chips or anything, because it can really start to, just like at home when you try to burn leaves, it creates a lot of smoke. They've really said, as best you can, try to feed it with only brush. You can sprinkle chips in, but not a real, production operation from that perspective.
Anybody else? Stacy?
Thank you. On page 14, your consulting line, 45030, looks like we haven't hit that number in a couple years of 96,000.
Let's see, 4503.
It's the top line.
Yes, okay, so, that number was brought up last year because as we are trying to phase the VACCON truck sort of out of frontline duty, we increased that line to contract out some catch basin cleaning. So this is primarily our line that's used for drug testing, roadside mowing, engineering consultants, our water sampling, dam registration, dig safe that we participate in, we pay per ticket that's called in, and catch basin cleaning. So we added the catch basin cleaning last year. That was a $30,000 addition to that line just for that one item. Belmore Septic in Bedford is their contracted cleaner for the next couple of years. They just started Monday, so we haven't even received our first bill. So that's why that one was brought up last year, and that's why it's under expended so far.
Anything else, Stacy?
No, thank you.
Anybody else? Come on, it's too easy on them.
Well, we're not through the lines yet.
Righty then. I did want to just let you folks know that last night's selectmen's meeting, we did do the tax rate, and it'll be we have it set at $26.31, which is a $1.49 increase over the current year per thousand. I'll give you details if you need it.
Thank you all.
Anybody else?
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Motion by Kelly, seconded by Mark. Abstaining, motion passes.